Could Bryan Danielson be retiring at AEW Grand Slam? Welcome to Allison Analysis. I'm Ben Allison and I've analysed last night's AEW Dynamite and here are my 5 key findings. Before I get into them, if you could please like and comment, that would be massively appreciated. In at number 5, Jay White is finally back, but will his old gimmick return with him? When Jay White was in New Japan, he was one of the most over heels in the entire wrestling industry. His defensive style is ridiculously high IQ, it made him feel almost impossible to beat in the ring, and he was booked like that as well. He was a star, he was brilliant on the mic, he was very different in the ring, and he was exceptional when it came to storytelling. But when he arrived in AEW, well, he was booked like a completely different guy. They never properly explained to the audience, to the casual AEW fans, who Jay White was, and because of that, at times the crowd didn't really care about him, and it was obvious in his AEW Championship match against MJF. And from there, they put him in a comedy group, he was in a feud with the Acclaimed for months, and all his momentum, well, it went down the drain. His run in the Continental Classic was by far the most interesting thing that he's done in AEW so far, but outside of that, well, it's kind of all just been mid. What he was doing in Japan, I think AEW can easily replicate that in the States, but the big thing is, I think it would actually work better there as well. Have him be frustrating to wrestle, almost impossible to beat, and just a cunning heel. Not an MJF heel, not a cowardly heel, but book him like he was in New Japan, right? He's a bit of a badass, but he's also incredibly smart. And because of that, well, he's very, very frustrating to wrestle. I genuinely believe that if he's booked right, he could be one of AEW's top stars. In at number 4, Mark Briscoe needs to defeat Chris Jericho. But I'm worried he won't. Very rarely in AEW have we seen Chris Jericho lose not 1 but 2 matches in a row. And of course, we know Hook defeated Chris Jericho, so I'm a bit worried he's going to get a win against Mark Briscoe. We've already seen Chris Jericho as Ring of Honor champion once, and it didn't work then, and I don't think it's going to work now. In fact, you could argue that moment when Jericho was Ring of Honor champion, that was potentially the moment when fans really turned on him and really got bored of him in AEW. Now the thing is, Mark Briscoe really could do with a big win against a big player in AEW, and a win against Chris Jericho would undoubtedly solidify his run as Ring of Honor champion. So if the plan is to have Mark Briscoe win at WrestleDream, I'm actually all for this. I think it's great and I think it will add prestige to Mark Briscoe's title run. But I'm just worried that won't be the case. In at number 3, Ospreay and Ricochet had an absolute banger, but the finish was absurd. Ospreay and Ricochet matches will always divide fans, right? There's always a lot of no-selling and all of that. It divides the fan base, but you can't argue it's a lot of fun. And last night's match was no different. The crowd was absolutely loving it. They were having the time of their lives, and so were a lot of people on social media. Of course, there was some no-selling, some big moves which maybe weren't as big as I personally think they should have been, but listen, it's a lot of fun. You know that's what you're going to get with a match like this, and it was just a complete blast until the finish. Seriously, the finish was so stupid, right? Will Ospreay blatantly pinned Ricochet. Ricochet's shoulders were down first, and Ospreay's shoulders went on the ground while he was pinning Ricochet, but he was on top of Ricochet. It was so obvious, right, that Ospreay won the match. So obvious. And then to make things worse, they decided to add 5 more minutes. This wasn't a time limit draw. The 5 more minute thing made no sense. You could say, okay, let's restart the match, but 5 more minutes? What? And then just in case that wasn't confusing enough, they then throw it out by DQ and Takeshita interferes. I mean, this was overbooked in the finish. I'm going to be honest with you, it was dreadful. I'm very excited for the triple threat match we're now going to get at WrestleDream, but we could have gotten to a different way. We could have just done the DQ to begin with, to be honest with you, because the way they went about it was just some 2019 WWE-esque stuff. In at number 2, Britt Baker shouldn't get a title shot anytime soon. I do think a lot of the hate which Britt Baker is currently getting is probably unjustified, but giving her a title shot, well, that's not the answer. Especially as she just lost a mid-card championship opportunity against Mercedes Moné. But the fact that Mariah May was at ringside last night makes me worry that once Mariah May is done with Willow, well then Britt Baker will be next. I mean, like I said, Britt Baker lost for the mid-card title, so from a kayfabe perspective, this makes zero sense at all. But also, just from a booking perspective, just being smart for a second, when fans are turning on her, it's probably not the time to give her a big push. AEW should just have Britt Baker have a few mid-card feuds for a few months, then maybe in 6 months' time put Britt Baker back in the main event scene. In at number 1, is Bryan Danielson going to retire at AEW WrestleDream? Over the past few weeks, Bryan Danielson has had matches with Nigel McGuinness, Kazuchika Okada, and now next week he's teaming with Yuta to take on Pac and Claudio. And the build for all of these matches feels a little bit rushed. Call me crazy, but part of me thinks that he wanted to get the Nigel match done, he wanted to get the Okada rubber match done, all before he hangs up his boots. So could it be possible that he hangs up his boots against Jon Moxley at AEW WrestleDream in his home state? I've always predicted that his last opponent in AEW will be Jon Moxley, and in his home state, it makes a lot of sense. But at the same time, I kind of do get the feeling it's possible Wheeler Yuta's going to turn heel on Danielson and we'll get that match as his final match. Plus, we know Darby Allin wants the match with Danielson, and are they really just going to throw that away and never do it? Who knows? But what I do know is, as a fan, this feels unpredictable, and that is great. That's when wrestling is at its best, and now I'm invested in that championship match at the pay-per-view. But that's all the analysis for this week's AEW Dynamite. If you guys did enjoy, please hit that thumbs up button and leave your thoughts in the show down in the comments below. See you in the next one. Peace!